All right, so welcome back, and thanks for inviting me here. It's a pleasure to be back at another Ethereum event. Some of you may know me because of my very long history with the Ethereum project, dating from day one when Vitalik hadn't even finished the paper. And what I'm going to talk about today is the challenges, the way I see them. Having been involved in the project for a long time, I could probably qualify as an Ethereum historian, an unofficial one. Wanted to talk to you about the challenges that I see right now in terms of the community that Ethereum is enjoying today. So I am quite involved in a number of things. Some of you may know me as the author of the Business Blockchain, a book that came out about 2.5 years ago. It was the first book talking about the business aspects of the blockchain. I was trying to explain it to a non-technical audience. That's kind of what I do. I also invest in a number of companies. Many of them are very Ethereum friendly, like CryptoKitties and OpenBazaar, who will be adding ETH to their currency in their peer-to-peer marketplace. And I also run the Token Summit in New York. So let's get going. The three topics that I'm going to talk about primarily are going to center around community, governance, and marketing. So they are interrelated because we are about the Ethereum community, and governance is totally intricate to that. And then if you don't market this, if you don't communicate what you are doing, then the efficiency is lost. And that's a very important aspect. I've given different versions of this talk before, and typically when I get invited to EthCon and other Ethereum community events, I have a question that I start with. And the question is, I ask the audience, what do you think is the most important feature about Ethereum? And it's a bit of a tricky question because the most important feature about Ethereum is not a feature. The most important feature about Ethereum is you. You being the community. The community. You are the most important thing about Ethereum. Ethereum's ecosystem, Ethereum's community is really something that is very unique that nobody else can come close to. As you know, now the landscape is a bit more crowded. Every once in a while we hear of a new blockchain coming on the scene or one that has been in development for a number of years, and they always try to attack Ethereum and say, well, we do this better than Ethereum, or we're faster, or we can do smart contracts much more easily, and so on. So they always try to attack Ethereum on the features, on some feature, one or the other. But they cannot attack Ethereum on the strength of the community. Having said that, of course, the Ethereum community is a very important feature. And I kind of have jokingly call it, it's made up of the 3Ds, the doers, the drummers, and the dreamers. And you are probably one of each one of them. And the interesting thing that right now, the community behind Ethereum has grown so much, such that it has become a bit of a challenge now to continue being efficient with this community. And at the end of the day, it is a living system. That's how I define Ethereum, if you think about it as a community. And a living system, the definition is that an organization that grows within its own environment by self-organizing according to opportunities. And there's nothing else that describes Ethereum better than that. So what I thought I would do in the first part of my presentation is let's go and look at the different characteristics of successful online communities that are forming as open source projects. And I'm going to show you a list of 20 characteristics. They are from this guy. How many of you know of Peter Hitchens and social architecture? So that's good. I have a few hands here. He has been involved in open source projects and peer-to-peer systems, distributed systems, WASM, and a lot around messaging specifically for almost 3 decades. And he wrote this great book called Social Architecture that I recommend to anybody involved in an open source project of the scope of Ethereum. And he came up with 20 characteristics of successful online communities. And the way to use this is to either, if you already have a community, you can assess yourself against them, or if you're about to start a new community, you can just go down the list and be attentive to each one of them. So this is the list, and I thought what we could do as a fun exercise, and we'll do it together, is let's go through each one of them one by one and try to rate ourselves, self-rate Ethereum on each one of them. So the first one, obviously, that's maybe an easy one. So my rating system is ABC. Okay, so A means everything's great, B means that could be improved, and C means it could be improved by quite a bit. So it's kind of something that's a bit more critical than a B. So strong mission, that's an easy one. It's kind of having a really stated reason for the group's existence, and otherwise we wouldn't be here. Look at how many people are in this room, and every time there is a EthCC, EthDev somewhere, whether it's in Denver or Waterloo and in Singapore, thousands of people show up. So that is a big strength, and they all have a very strong sense of community. So what would you give this one? A? That's an easy one. All right. Second one, free entry. It means how easy it is to join the group, to participate. I mean, nobody forced you to join, right? You all joined on your own. So that's also an easy one. Shall we give it an A? All right, A. Let's keep going. Transparency. How openly and publicly decisions are made. And this is a quote from the book, Groups that work in secret do not achieve wisdom. Obviously, it's the wisdom of the crowd. I mean, again, that's another raison d'etre of Ethereum being very decentralized. Transparency is very important. And there, I give it an A minus. Again, I'm being direct here, I'm being open. I think the community itself is very transparent. All the projects are very transparent. But I've heard the foundation itself could be more transparent. So that's why it's an A minus, because there is a bit of improvement that could be made in that specific department. 4, free contributors. How far people are paid to contribute? Are they free contributors or are they paid contributors? And I'm sure some of you are paid, some of you are not, are just doing this because you love it, because you want to do it, because you believe in the mission. And so what do you think there? What do we rate Ethereum on that? A. It's not too bad. It's not. There's a mix. The point here is it's good to have a mix of people that are paid because that's their job, that are just doing it because they are driven by the mission. Obviously, I mean, some of this could be debatable, but I give it my best shot. Full remixability, how the contributions can remix into each other's works. I mean, that's the raison d'etre of open source. So again, that's an easy one. There's a lot, maybe too much remixability. Okay, let's keep going. Now, this is an interesting one. When I say in the context of the book and how Peter describes this particular characteristic, he's not talking about technical protocols. He's talking about the way that people know about how to interact with each other. So what would you think about that? I would give it a B here. We had a discussion earlier in the week in one of the rings, one of the magician's rings, about the fact that there is no code of conduct, for example. I mean, there was a code of conduct for EthDev, but when the incident on Twitter happened 2 weeks ago with Afrim, the community did not respond fast enough to mitigate this because there was no specific code of conduct. So I think there's some improvement here in terms of clarifying the specific working protocols between people and groups. Fair authority. Now we're getting into some of them that I'm going to be a bit more critical about. So here it's about how the rules are enforced and having some sense of authority, because without authority the rules have no strength. What's the point of having rules if you continuously break them? Or if nobody, what's the point of having a red light if you don't stop? So what would you give this this particular characteristic scoring. ABC. I gave it a C. So I think there isn't enough strong decision making that can cut through ambiguous decisions. There's almost never a perfect decision in anything, and it's always better to even have some kind of decision, even if it's not the best one to start with, than not to have any decision and to continue to delay into analysis and let's wait because we don't have a perfect solution. That's kind of the engineering mindset. So I think we can do better there. Non-tribalism, this is kind of, sometimes it happens. So there I think I gave it a B, because that happens. It's been criticized that tribalism exists, and maybe a small degree. I don't think it's a big one, but it's always good to be aware of it. Self-organization, how far, I mean, this is a great one. I mean, look at the magicians' rings and the cat herders and all of these initiatives. Nobody's asking for permission. I think this is one where Ethereum excels in self-organizing, in having groups, finding there is a void in a particular area, and then they go and form a group. I formed a group on Monday about marketing communications specifically, because I felt there was a void in being more precise and more forthcoming and more regular in communicating what Ethereum is doing to a non-technical audience. So nobody stopped me. We had 20 people up there. And then we're going to do some work in that regard. Tolerance, how the group embraces conflicts. And I like this quote: there are no dangerous opinions, only dangerous responses. So think about sometimes if you're in a Reddit discussion or Twitter, and just be mindful about how you respond to people. So what do we give to that one? C. C. I may be critiqued for that, but B? You think it's B? It deserves a B. Okay, I'll change it. I'm easy. In that, yeah, I mean, it's not perfect, but I maybe wanted to make the point because it is not good, because sometimes not wanting to resolve a conflict results in a prolongation of the decision making. And look at how many EIPs there are. So many of them, some are overlapping, and it delays things. And then when people don't agree on things, they say, "Go, let's go back, analyze it further." So it goes. We kind of get into analysis paralysis. So for that reason, I think I gave it a C. Measurable success: how well the group rewards and measures progress, and makes it also visible. I give it a C++. I mean, nobody gets rewarded. I mean, why would, like, this is a big event. Yeah, we have hackathons. We give awards to the hackathon winners. That's good. Why isn't there some kind of award system maybe more visible for us, for those projects? Let's not be afraid to calling the winners in some respect, or those that are making real progress. High scoring, how the group, this is kind of related to high scoring, how the group rewards its participants. That's why I gave it a B. Decentralization, how widely the group is spread out. I mean, of course, this is an A. I mean, it's the essence of Ethereum. Although, yeah, I was going to give it A+++, but I showed it to somebody. He said, no, remove one, because there is a bit of weakness here. We do well on decentralization, but we don't do well on localization. After decentralization, because you have to be local as well. I mean, we are in France, we are in certain parts of the world, in Canada, very strong, in the US and Germany, but there are some parts of the world where we could be stronger, maybe China and other Asia, and some parts of Asia at least. Free workspaces, how easy it is to create new projects. Again, very easy. You just create a project and nobody's going to stop you. It's not an issue right now. Smooth learning, how easy it is to get started and keep learning. I give it an A-. Some people might think it's a B. I think we could do better. There is a new website that Aya talked about, and I was meeting with her earlier today. It seems that they are going to make lots of improvements there. It will be a jumping point into many other educational resources, and right now they're a bit scattered, so it's not that they're not there, you just have to find them. And that's a challenge of decentralization for any type of decentralized project. There's no central index for things. You have to kind of crawl and find them. Regular structure. How predictable it is to see the structure of who does what and knowing exactly, having some predictability behind that. That's not so perfect, I think. I think we can improve there. Does anybody know how many people work for the foundation, for example? We don't know. Who's doing what, where are the teams, and so on. That could be a little bit more openly available. Positivity, I think it's great. I mean, the group is very positive. In spite of the challenges and some of the downturns, I give it an A there. Why not? Because this is a strength of Ethereum, I think. And I like these 3 quotes. I know sometimes you don't like trolls, but trolls keep us honest. Sometimes they give you a chance to prove your value. I mean, I'm not in support of excessively engaging with trolls because that's what they want. They want to be fed. But I give them a chance sometimes, and if they keep trolling, then I ignore them or I just try to kill them, or I block them. Copycats are good. Imitation is the best flattery, right? And competitors keep you on your toes. They help you build more resistance. Nothing wrong with that, especially if you're the leader. Sense of humor. How many of you were at DEF CON 4 in Prague? You saw the music and the dancing. How many were at EthCon in Toronto? Do you remember how did it start? With a dance. Was it the chicken dance or something like that? They were like Vitalik and others were dancing on stage, and I think we have a good sense of humor, right? A++. Minimalism, how much excess work the group does. B. I think it varies, it depends. Too much minimalism is maybe not good because it leads to anarchy. Let's keep going. Sane Funding, how the group survives economically. So it depends again. I don't want to focus too much on the foundation, but I would give the B. The foundation is a source of some funding, but there are other sources of funding. I think it hasn't been a bad environment for funding, although lately it has been more difficult because of the price of tokens, obviously. So that's in a nutshell, if you want to rate ourselves against the characteristics of online communities according to Peter Hitchens. And if you look about the whole total, it's not too bad. I mean, on the C, only 4, and in the B's, 5. Obviously, I'd love to see Ethereum improve. And it's not just about the foundation. Don't put everything on the foundation. It's us. It's the community. It's the groups. It's all of us have a role in making this better into the future. All right, let's talk about governance now. Second topic of my talk here. I've been researching a lot the topic of governance, but I look at it from a business perspective. When you hear Vlad and others talk about governance, their positioning is more coming from the technology, from implementation, consensus-wise, network, peer-to-peer, and all of that. It's great, and we need that, but I think there are several dimensions to governance. I gave a talk about governance in Hong Kong a month ago, where there's a lot more going on into what I talk about, but I'm just going to extract a couple of slides. But the key point here is that governance is multidimensional. We tend to think perhaps more in terms of the philosophical dimension, which is kind of why we are here. Otherwise, we wouldn't be kind of interested in decentralized governance. There's a technical aspect, of course, economic. Now we're trying to talk about that a bit more. Is programmable POW, it has economic implications, so what happens? But then the fourth dimension that is sometimes neglected is the business dimension, because it's about making decisions. Again, there's no perfect decisions. You have to make a decision at some point in time and explain the pros and cons or whatever that decision is so you can move forward. So the business kind of hat sometimes is that hat that cuts through the the noise, and sometimes you need that to try to find the balance between the best decision in terms of governance. And then it's really different depending who you are. If you're a blockchain, if you're a peer-to-peer network, if you are a DApp, if you are just a straight protocol, if you are just after socio-political change, like some of the democracy related projects, depending on where you come from, you will have different priorities and interests in terms of how you look at governance and how you solve governance in a decentralized manner. So you have to keep that in mind. And my point here is to use governance as a tool. Use it as a tool, not as a weapon, and not as a crutch. A weapon would be like, oh, we're going to fork. So that's it. I don't agree, I'm going to fork. That's a weapon. And a crutch, you just delay decisions. You use it as an excuse to not do something. A well-oiled governance should be a tool that enables and empowers everybody. Some issues very quickly about governance. It's not just about voting. We tend to focus a lot about voting. And there are lots of experiments, quadratic voting and carbon voting and so on. Decision-making by consensus is not always ideal. If you look at how companies are run, imagine if CEOs would just, and managers would just decide everything by consensus. Then you always go at the lowest common denominator and you reach mediocrity very easily, very quickly. So I think we should not take consensus to the nth degree by also assuming that all decisions have to be arrived at by consensus. Consensus is great for technical protocols, and we are still learning as to how to adjust our decision-making from a business perspective, and that's important as well. Communities alone should not govern on their own, meaning, so they are part of the governance, and there's been a lot that's been written about that, but I like that point very much. And let's be aware of not prematurely decentralizing governance, because we're still babies, we're still learning about it. And that's the point I'm going to come back to at the end of my talk. Code is not governance yet. Laws have to catch up to it. Transparency and openness is good in self-governance, but let's be careful as well. One size does not fit all, as I was mentioning earlier. If you're a blockchain or a DApp or a protocol, whatever, where you come from will give you a different perspective as far as what you do with governance. And this is a fact. A lot of the governance tools are very technical. When they require you to vote, you have to go to your wallet, you have to jump through some hoops that a business user is not able to comprehend yet. Even some of the governance projects are very technical in nature. They haven't reached the business user yet. That's one of the reasons why you don't get a lot of quorum participation in these token-based voting mechanisms. And I'm sorry to say, but the DAO was not a standard. It was an accident. So everybody wants to be like the DAO and have self-governance of everything, putting everything on the chain, and that's not really what's advisable, because we have a lot to learn before we can automate things. Are we decentralized yet? That's an important question. There was a website that tried to quantify that, and the website has gone down since then, unfortunately, because it was costing money to go and crawl the different nodes and find out where we were. I wish it would come back. We need to better define decentralization. If Ethereum is the standard in decentralized global blockchains, maybe Ethereum can set the standard in what it means and let others measure themselves against those standards. And when another project has 21 nodes and they say they are decentralized and they are fast, then we know what we are comparing. I put this chart 2 months ago, and it got some pushback. I'm a big fan of marketing communications, not in the sense of marketing in terms of advertising, not in the sense of shouting from the roofs, but in the sense of communicating very accurately what you are doing, especially to a non-technical audience. By and large, a lot of the blockchain projects start to focus on the technical audience. But we also have to focus on the non-technical audience because they are also decision makers. They have budgets, and they are the ones that give those budgets to developers. And the best kind of marketing is where you are rightly marketing what you are doing, not overly and not underly, not under marketing. I put Ethereum as in the under-marketed bucket because there's potential to do a better job. And I hope I will be able to contribute a little bit to it in the ring that I proposed. And in the over-marketed, it means what you're saying is way ahead of what you are delivering. It doesn't mean you are lying. It means that you're just a little bit too ahead. Maybe your vision, you're selling your vision, but your product is way behind the vision. And you're deceiving a little bit the market. I got a lot of pushback from two companies on this chart, but one of them was came back and said, "You're right. What can we do better?" And that's what I like to hear: people being self-conscious about their shortcomings. Now, this is a new one that I just published an hour ago. I think this will be controversial. I've thought a lot about this. I've talked to a lot of people. I see a lot of things in my field. I put my analyst hat. I used to be an analyst. And this is the reality right now in terms of where we are. I mean, Ethereum is the leader. When you think about, this has nothing to do with the price of tokens or market caps. This has to do with market presence and market evolution and capabilities and where they are. Obviously, nothing comes close to Ethereum or Bitcoin as bona fide blockchains. They are there are applications on it, there are users. It's there to stay. And the next bucket to look for is the contenders. So this is a modified Gartner Magic Quadrant. Gartner, the famous analyst firm, they have magic quadrants for like hundreds of software products. That's part of their revenue model. They just do that and they publish them and they charge companies to explain them. So the next ones that in my opinion, that are kind of contenders, so the contenders are the closest to becoming leaders, are EOS, Polkadot, and Cosmos. The challengers are doing some interesting things, and they could be either moving to contenders or dropping off. And there are a lot of new players in the niche meaning that we're not sure how they're going to evolve. They may become contenders, they may become challengers, they may go away, but at least they have something interesting that they are working on. And if you notice here, there is an anomaly here. Where there is one item here that is not really a blockchain. Which one is that? It's the Amazon. Have you heard of the Amazon Quantum Ledger database? It was announced a couple of months ago. It's a distributed ledger database, basically. It's an immutable database with programmability. And I put it there because you don't need a blockchain for everything. If all you want is immutability, so you should consider as well just having an immutable ledger database, for example. So think about that. I think, imagine if all the database vendors, because right now they aren't really into the blockchain. Imagine if all the big ones like Oracle and so on got into this and started to have immutable databases, cryptographically computed and stored and with giving some properties of what that we know that blockchains have. I think that would be a game changer. So that's where we are today. And the important thing to consider, the implication for Ethereum is that Ethereum cannot rest on their laurels, especially that now it's becoming challenging because we have Ethereum 2.0 and we have 1.xxx or XYZ. And it almost looks like there are two chains. And some people in the market are a little bit worried. So what is the transition going to be from 1x to 2? And it looks like we restarted again a new kind of project with 2.0. A year ago, more than a year ago, I spoke at Denver. I was the opening speaker. And I put that chart because that's where I thought we were. At the time, there was no talk of ETH 2.0. It was just Ethereum, one Ethereum that was going to evolve and continue to improve itself and become more scalable, become faster, POS, and so on. But today, since DEFCON 4 and ETH 2.0, it seems that the timelines are shifting. So we have to be careful about delivering on time. And what happens if ETH 2.0 is delayed or doesn't come in 2-3 years? Are we going to maintain market share and leadership? And that's really an important question to keep in mind. In closing, I just wanted to close with some positive advice. I think if I just picked 3 of them, I think they are probably some of the more important ones in my opinion. Let's not try to eat our dog food too early. I mean, as an observer, as somebody on the ground, talking to a lot of people and interfacing with a lot of projects on a daily basis, especially around the Ethereum ecosystem specifically, we tend to be wanting to implement decentralization too quickly. And then we have to just maybe slow down a bit if it doesn't make sense in some cases. It means introducing a little bit more sense of urgency. These are all related, and some authority in decision making to break the deadlock of decisions so that some of the projects can accelerate their delivery. And that would be my advice if we wanted to go forward and maintain the leadership that we want to have. Thank you very much. Oh, because at the end of the day, we're all in we have the same goal. And we all want the blockchain to lead us to a new world that is better than the one we have today. That is the big question. Thank you very much. I think we have 5 minutes or less for any questions, 1 or 2, whatever. Yes. Do they need a microphone?
Do. Thank you, by the way. That was really interesting, especially from like a sociological point of view, almost. I just noticed at the end when you spoke about trying to find authority, especially in this sort of like murky landscape that Ethereum finds itself, I believe anyway. To what extent do you find it almost like paradoxical when leaders sort of step down in anticipation of launching a decentralized smart contract platform, and then when you're facing such change that Ethereum's going through right now, you then need leadership? It's almost like this cycle, but how do you get out of that?
So make sure I understand. The question is, how do you break the cycle of when you said smart contracts, right? I didn't catch when I was sneezing. I didn't catch part.
You even saw it at Litecoin Foundation. But then I'd almost argue that you do need leadership for certain efficiencies. Because right now, I'll be blunt, it's just a bit of a mess.
Yes.
So what's the answer to it?
But my point there is about people leadership in terms of project management and project decision making.
Would it be more than one or a multitude of people?
Oh, it's a multitude, but it's really implementing a little bit more traditional management into this big open source project that is called Ethereum. One of the pushback I keep hearing is that, well, we're not a startup. And you say, well, open source projects are not like startups. Yeah, you're not like startup, but you have a lot of startup characteristics. And you have a lot of organizational characteristics. You don't want to reinvent everything. People are people, they have to be managed. And not everybody can self-manage themselves. Not everybody is self-motivated. Not everybody is going to excel at everything they do. Not everybody knows everything. So you have to manage people to get results. And that's really what the focus of my point was about the management aspect. And there has been an important initiative that Lane is leading, the cat herders, to really professionalize project management a bit more into the groups that are leading those different groups. So that's kind of where it's going to go.
Hi. So you gave funding sources for the work in our community B. And to me, it seems more like a D, like the proliferation of different competitors who are launching their own token to build their own blockchain seems like it's only happening because people can't fund their ideas to scale blockchain networks, and you stay with the Ethereum community to get that work done. So do you think that there's work we could do to improve funding sources that would reduce the splintering that happens in our community?
So I'm not sure if I understood it properly. Do you think people are moving because of funding or because they are not finding the features that they want? Is that what you're saying?
I think there's a lot of teams that would be happy to build features on Ethereum if they could make as much money as they intend to make from selling a brand new token.
I think the funding is not, I mean, if you're only depending on Ethereum funding from the foundation, you shouldn't be. I think a lot of venture capitalists are out there with funds and would be happy to fund startups and ideas and projects that are doing some great things. So I don't think there's a lack of funding. There are lots of new funds and not so new funds, maybe a year or two old, that have a lot of money left in their funds, and they want to invest them, they want to deploy them. So I would encourage projects to reach out to the community of venture capitalists. I mean, I'm an angel investor, I'm not an institutional VC. We're not bad people. I mean, there's been some bad rap in some places about staying away from VCs, but if you get the right VC on your side, right investor, right group, it's not such a bad thing because they can give you lots of mentorship. And they've been seeing a lot of these companies like yours, and they can help you to grow. On the other aspect, yeah, some projects have been leaving Ethereum, maybe because there is no fit. So be it. But at the same time, there are new ones that are coming to it, and there are ones that have been working on projects for the last 2 years that are going to go live, and that will bring a lot of transactions into it. So I'm not too worried when I hear that some projects are leaving for one or two other reasons. Yes.
Hey, so a question I have is, why does the community exist? Like, what is the shared incentive here? And is it just the value? Is it this like collective delusion around the ETH token? And if so, you know, how does the growth of the community impact the ETH token? And what happens as individual like ERC20s on Ethereum, like for example, BNB token now is slowly like rising in value significantly. And what happens when the value of individual ERCs begin to like, you know, approach the value of ETH itself?
I mean, that's a loaded question. I think it's about the collective work. I mean, you ask, why does a community exist? It's about the collective work and the output that they are delivering. And that's still way ahead. I think if I talk about Ethereum specifically, Ethereum is way ahead from the other blockchains and projects. And I think the price of the token will take care of itself. It's a common saying you hear in the stock market when a company is not doing well or when the stock is depressed, but the CEO knows that they are doing a good job, the company knows they are doing a good job, and the mantra there is keep doing what you're doing, the stock price will take care of itself, and it does in more cases than none. So I think the prices right now have there's no logic. There's no logic, there's no correlation. There's a lot of dumb money in the system, but it's up to us to show some metrics and show some real measurable progress so that the investors can try to correlate these metrics to some valuation that they can have in their heads.
Hi, William. I'm Judy Mam from dada.nyc. And it seems to me that some of the Bs in this exercise have to do with failure of communication. In a way, I think that it's a huge challenge for such a decentralized organization to have efficient communication. And I wanted to hear what you think about this. Or
yeah,
how
the question is about there is a challenge in efficient communication. You're right. I mean, that's why my topic was the challenges of decentralized communities. And we are at that stage right now. It's a good problem to have. It's a big group. So I think my initiative is going to hopefully help in a little bit. But I think the foundation is aware of that too. And we have to all have that as a responsibility, is to communicate more with each other and with the market more precisely, more aggressively, and more regularly. But it has to be done. It has been a shortcoming. But the first step towards change is awareness. And now I think there's a bit more awareness that there is a shortcoming. So I would wait a few months and hopefully see the progress. Thank you. I think I have to cut it short so we can stay on time. Thanks again. I'm going to stay here for a little bit longer. Bye-bye.